Welcome to No Quit, the podcast where real business isn't filtered. I'm Jeff Leschere, founder of Fleur Law and Title. I've built an 8-figure company, but not without setbacks, burnouts, and moments that nearly broke me. This podcast is where I tell the truth about what it really takes to grow something that lasts. The wins, the losses, and the grit in between. If you're in it for more than just the highlight reel, you're in the right place. The stories shared on this podcast are based on real experiences, but details have been changed or generalized to protect client confidentiality. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship. All right, how's it going, everybody? It's another episode of the No Quit Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Leschere. Today we have with us Michael Donovan. Michael is one of our top attorneys here at Fleur Law and Title. He is our only board-certified, specialized attorney in estate planning. Really probably one of the few, by percentage, right, in the state.
I think by percentage, yeah.
Yeah, it's a special designation. You have to take the special test, and there's all this extra work. And so very few attorneys have gone down that road, but Mike is one. So welcome, Mike. Glad to have you.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff. Happy to be here. So
well, good. Give me the short synopsis of who is Michael Donovan.
All right. So Michael, like you said, I'm a estate planning attorney. I've been an attorney for 16 years. I grew up, still live in St. Tammany Parish in Slidell. Wife, 2 kids, living the travel ball soccer life right now, high school soccer starting. So that's exciting. But yeah, pretty much just, typical guy. I think if you talk to some of my buddies, they say I'm a inside dog, I'm not like the outdoorsy type here, like my sports on the weekend, that sort of thing. But yeah, pretty laid back, just trying to enjoy life, work.
So you're one of how many kids again, remind me?
I'm one of 6 kids. So, good Catholic family, I guess. 5 boys, 1 girl. The girl's the youngest. And yeah, we all do.
I guess I didn't realize that. What's your sister's name?
Colleen.
Where does she live?
I think she lives in Austin now.
You
think?
think?
Yeah, I do. Like they move around a lot. Yeah, we all do different things. It's funny. I'm the only lawyer in my family, so I'm the first one. My dad's a chemical engineer. 2 of my brothers are engineers. One does finance. One works with the McNeese State football team, and Colleen does. She does sales, something like that. Really not.
But they all kind of scattered, right? Nobody lives here but you, sort of thing. Or?
One of my brothers still lives in Slidell.
Okay.
One lives. I'm originally from. I was born in New Jersey, so I guess I'm a Yankee. But one of my brothers moved back to New Jersey. Colleen lives in Austin. Ray lives in Lake Charles, where my niece is, and then my brother Daniel just moved to Alaska. So
wow.
So we're all over, yeah. So.
And your wife? How long have you been married?
Oh man, dude. 2008, right? I hope so. So 17, while. 17, 18 years. So we got married. I think. We got married my second year. In between
Becky,
my second year and third. Yeah, Becky.
Yeah, is she from Slidell as well, or?
Yeah, she's from Slidell. Yeah,
okay.
We actually.
We're in high school together, or?
We went to high school together. And we didn't start dating though until after we both had graduated from college.
Yeah.
So not high school sweethearts, which I get reminded of every once in a while.
So look, what we try to do with this podcast is sort of bring guys on the show, guys and girls on the show that we want to learn more about, and we'll get to some of that in a little bit too. But we do want to hone in on some things in life that have been some adversity, something difficult. I'm trying to hopefully create a scenario where people are able to come here and hear from others, not just that they've gone through similar things or rough patches in life, but maybe some maybe it's a 3-step process. Maybe it's these are the things I did to sort of pull myself out of this or get through this tough time. So without him and hawing a whole lot here, like can you think of a time that was difficult in your life, and tell me about that and how you got through it? So
kind of just going back to what I just said. So I got married in between my second and third year of law school. So you're married, you're graduating law school, so you want to find a job. And I was fortunate to find a job right after I passed the bar exam. So you know how it goes. You graduate law school, but that doesn't mean anything. You pass the bar exam. So I had a job lined up in St. Tammany Parish, close to home. I'm pretty sure Becky was pregnant by that point.
What kind of law was it?
It was insurance defense, workers' comp defense firm. And pretty much 6 or so months after starting that, they laid off, 3 or 4 attorneys, and I was one of them because, just that's the way the market was at that time.
Was it the 2008 financial crisis, basically?
Well, part of it, there was a lot of that, and I mean, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but the post-Katrina, everybody was hired for these defense firms and that sort of thing, and that work was drying up. So after that, I had to figure out, okay, I'm married, I have a kid on the way.
How did that go down, though? Like, you show up to work one day and it's like, they call you into an office and lay you off, or was it like a mass layoff? Or
it was, they did it individually. It was, I think at the end of the day, Friday, I think they came in and was like, you knew it was up because it was, I wasn't the first one and wasn't the last one. So, but, I mean, in reality, it was probably one of the better things that happened to me, because I think I always wanted to have my own law firm and start my own business. And that was kind of what led me on this track to kind of where I am today, which, very good place, very happy place.
What was that conversation like, though, at home with your wife? I mean, the part about losing the job, I'm sure, was not pleasant, but did you go straight into, I'm gonna look for another job, or I'm gonna open my own gig?
Well, I think what it was is sort of that, I don't know, type A cockiness you get when you go through law school and you do some of the stuff that I've done in the past, and you just sort of, it's like, well, I think I can do this on my own. So I did look for other jobs, but during that time, I still sort of reached out to people and said, hey, I'm doing this thing, the Donovan Law Firm. I was getting clients. Even to this day, like, maybe you feel the same way. I'm still surprised people hire me. It's this weird thing where, like, I mean, like you said at the beginning, I'm an expert in my field, I think, and I know a lot of stuff and I help a lot of people. But even at that time, that early stage, it was just like, okay, I can do this. And then you start thinking of, because like I said, I'm from St. Tammany Parish. I kind of wanted to stay over there and do that type of thing. So it's like, how can I make this work living in St. Tammany Parish? What do I need to do? And it was just sort of kind of doing those steps and just trying to figure out, okay, well, I need clients. So how do I get clients? I'll let people know that I'm an attorney, so I'm going to try to get clients. Then you start getting some clients and you're like, okay, I need a space to do that. So then you're able to get a space to do that. So you just sort of take it.
So you went after the clients first and then decided I need some office space.
Yeah, but I think it was more about, I'll be lying if I said, I had this great book of business before I got an office space. I always kind of say I did it a little bit backwards, to where it was more about, I had a couple clients. I knew I could get clients. I talked to a couple local attorneys who said, man, you can make more money. You don't need to go work for this guy or that guy, and you can do it. So I pretty much had an office with maybe like one client, and it was like, but it just kind of grew from there. You did the next steps that you needed to do to figure out, like, how do I get the next client? What do I do to get multiple clients?
How did you go about doing it?
So one is, I did, I reached out. I remember one of the things I did was I went to introduce myself to all the judges in the parish. I went to the judges because they refer out curator cases and those sorts of things. So I would get some of those to help out. I, went to all the sort of, meetings that they have for attorneys and those sorts of things. I did start advertising, like in the, school bulletins, church bulletins, all that sort of stuff.
I think that's the part that surprised me, and it almost still to this day surprises me. My track was, similar to yours. I ended up opening my own, gig at some point, but I was probably, maybe even still today, 20 years as a lawyer, you still run into people that you've known your whole life. You think that they know what you do, and they have no concept at all.
Oh, I have a great story about this. So this is about maybe 10 years after. I'll never forget. I was going to, like good Catholics, we always go out to eat after Good Friday service, And so I think I was coming from something, and I met my family at the restaurant, and my sister was there, and she was like, Mike, like, what do you do? Like, what do you do for a living? And I'm like sitting there, and I was like, I'm a lawyer, She's like, yeah, but what do you do? Like, what do you do? And I think that is a big issue for a lot of lawyers who try to kind of reach out and tell people what they do, because this, like they drill to you in law school. It's like the worst thing you can do is advertise that you're a lawyer and try to kind of, invite people to hire you. So, but yeah, I'm always.
Well, it's on both ends of the spectrum too, I feel like. So there's the one end where people want to know, or you got to let them know what it is that you do, what areas of the law do you practice in. And then you have the other end where, hey, I got a quick legal question. And it will run the spectrum of criminal to patent law to family law to all these things. I'm like, man, none of those areas. Well, you're a lawyer, right? I'm like, well, yeah. But I mean, do you walk in and talk to your neurologist about your foot pain? I mean, it's sort of similar in that way. But I also don't think you should give her a hard time. You don't even know where she lives, man.
That's true. So, I mean, I know she lives in Austin now. I do know she lives in Austin. But she moves, man. She moves.
Yeah.
But
so how long before you progressed to the estate planning kind of specialization?
So, like I always, and I tell my clients, like, when they ask me questions about those other topics, I said that when I was a baby attorney and you had to do everything to pay the bills, keep the lights on, I was doing everything. And I think when you go through law school and you think about the type of law you want to do, at least for me, it was like, because again, nobody in my family's an attorney, but it was like Law and Order.
So there's
like
nobody to really know unless
so there's nothing to really do. So Law and Order is like, what's my sense of what a lawyer did. And you think you want to do that. But the more that I practiced in the different areas, which I think is really important for younger attorneys to do, is you realize, well, criminal attorney, it's fun. Like it's a fun type of law to work with, but the lifestyle is like you're sitting at the courthouse all day. You may only have one case and that sort of thing. So then you go to like family law, which just really, I didn't have the personality for or sort, that sort of thing. And then you do the personal injury cases, which, are also very interesting and lucrative. But what I found myself pulled toward was like estate planning was a type of practice where I was really helping Jeff. Like Jeff would come to my office and said, I have this problem or I have this need and I can help Jeff. And that's what I was dealing with. I wasn't having to really, it fit my personality more and my sort of skill set that I could help Jeff and not worry so much about, even though I was successful at it, like beating this other attorney or getting one over. And I had a conversation with another attorney who I was working with, and he was encouraging me to like you got to niche down, and he's like, well, what do you want to do? And this was after we had settled a 6-figure case, and it was a really good case, and I was like, I think I want to do estate planning. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, because it just fits me better. Like this is what I found that fits me better.
Yeah,
so
I would agree with that. I think that it's the compliment that I hear most about you from our clients and the people that work in this company. They all like you. You're easygoing. You don't ruffle any feathers. You make people feel comfortable, which, you need in those scenarios, right? Because you're either talking about what's going to happen at my death,
right,
or in a succession matter, like what's happened as a result of someone's death. And so, I mean, we get people getting here emotional and it's tough. You've got to be able to bring them back down to earth and kind of talk through these kind of difficult things at times. But no, I think you do a great job with it. I know you practiced for quite some time before you went for the specialization. Like what caused you to want to go after that?
I think it was just sort of, I think it was one part of it was just like, oh, hey, well, this is like the next step. This is like the next thing to do. But I mean, there's a part of it was just like, I did think at that time that I was a specialist and I wanted to be able to kind of what we just talked about before. I wanted to let people know like, hey, same way that you go to a neurologist, they're specialized in that. They have a certificate. I actually have a certificate, that says I'm a estate planning specialist. And I wanted people to get that sort of, comfort that when they talk to me, they're talking to someone that they know what they're talking about.
So explain the requirements to become the specialized.
So there's a few of them. One is you have to practice. I think it's 5 years. You just have to be an attorney in good standing, not do anything crazy, I guess.
Does it have to be centralized or have to a certain percentage of the work?
Eventually, for a certain period of time, your percentage of work has to be focused on estate planning, successions, those sorts of things. So that's sort of the initial step or the initial sort of criteria. And then in order to become a specialist, you have to get recommended by other attorneys that are already specialists. So you have to have, some of your peers say, hey, I think Mike would be a good candidate for this. He's, I know his work. He's done good work, that sort of thing. And then you have to take a test.
Which is so difficult that it's open book.
That's right. Yeah.
For a month, right? Or a
yeah,
couple
I think
months.
you get 6 weeks.
That's some pretty good confidence from the council putting that test out that they think is difficult.
Yeah. So yeah, it was 6 weeks test, open book, open everything, and you go through and like.
What's the pass rate on that? Do you know?
I don't know what the pass rate is, to be honest with you.
I mean, the bar is like what, 65-ish,
something like that. Yeah.
I mean, I have to imagine a specialization. Let's see if you guys that go after. So the pass rate might be similar or even higher.
Yeah.
But there's just so few guys. I mean, I don't know the last time I looked at the list, but there's got to be tens of thousands of lawyers in the state of Louisiana.
Yeah.
And there's got to be at most hundreds.
I think at the last CLE they mentioned there was maybe like 150 specialists in Louisiana. And I think it's something like you were kind of hitting on, was that you got to really want to take it, like it's not just a test everybody takes.
Well, I think that says something too about the practice, and maybe I'm being too negative or cynical, but you tell me how you feel. It's troublesome to some degree, the practice of law, because you go to law school, you learn none of the actual practice, right? You learn the what happened in some cases and maybe some statutes. You get out, you're supposed to be capable of at least figuring out how to spot the issue for the client and fix it, or help them somehow. The truth is, not everybody's really that great at it. And then when you get into these intricate areas like estate planning, you do a lot of trust work, right? One of the reasons to do some trusts would be to, preserve wealth or save on taxes, things like that. And, these are guys that probably still have their taxes done at, some, local franchise or whatever, or some, bookkeeper that they know from down the street that makes some banana bread or some mess like that.
Yeah.
And it's just like these guys aren't even making decisions properly in their own life, much less for their clients. And it's just like without this certification that proves specifically, unequivocally, this, you don't have just the broad general knowledge, how to do these things, right? And the rules that go along with it. They're out there doing them.
Yeah.
I run into people all the time doing trusts. I'm like, man, I've been involved in estate planning for 20 years, and I trust Mike to get involved with my clients that need trusts.
Right. And I mean, I think there was, we had actually a client come in yesterday, and it wasn't even a trust, it was a will, and it wasn't it wasn't written the way that I would have written it. Let me put it that way. Mm-hmm. And it was written in a way that somebody who's, when you go to these, you've seen the lawyers' websites that say, what are my practice areas? And it's, you got to scroll down to see the end of it, right?
Yeah.
My practice areas is estate planning, successions. That's it. That's all I do. And you see that, and you can tell, like, law school is wild like that. The day after we pass the bar and are licensed attorneys, we can handle a capital murder case, or we can handle a multi-billion-dollar class action lawsuit. There's no sort of barrier beyond that. And so, like you mentioned before, like, you don't go to a neurologist for, a broken leg, and you can see that, and it causes problems. Like this will, which was very simple. You can ask, I researched it for an hour. I asked the opinion of 2 other attorneys. Like, what do you think this would happen? What do you think this would do? And it's something that I would think that someone that is in my position as a specialist that does, this is all they do every day, it never would have, come to be an issue. Like, you would have spotted it.
I feel like that's a part where it's like, I would like the folks to kind of see behind the curtain a little bit here. It's a scary thought, because what happens there is, if I took on, like you said, a capital murder case, there's no way to copy that. Right. You have to really go in there and learn it. Maybe you can watch some guys, if you go up to the courthouse and catch a capital murder case, not that there's that many, and maybe try to mimic what you saw in there. But there are a lot of attorneys out there that will get their hands on one will as a form, and they will churn it out to every individual that asks them to do a will. And it's just not the way it works. Like, everybody's family dynamic is different. What you want done with your things is going to be different. And your goals there. And it's sad but true. how many people come in with these wills, and I'm just like, it's the same will
Right.
for every client of this attorney I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And they're just churning them out one after another, the exact same.
Yeah. And it's, and again, I'm, maybe you and me both, just because we practice in that area, like we're more sensitive to it. We see the same way that I think if we try to take on like a huge, class action case and
I wouldn't do it.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, but like even, there's certain things that we don't do because it's like, that's not what we do and what we're good at. And I think there's a benefit of that to your attorney sort of saying to people like, hey, this is what I do. Like, I don't do this other thing. I know other great attorneys that do these other things. And I think it would be great if you go talk to them. But I think it is an issue because the will is seen as something, especially a will, a will is seen as something very simple and basic. And, there's a lot that can go wrong with a poorly written will, right? And, it's just, you need to talk to the right person to really kind of make sure that your estate and family are protected.
I mean, to some extent too, right? If a lot can go wrong with a poorly written will, one of which is it can be basically nullified, voided, disregarded. And so it's as though you don't have it at all, which is a drastic change from what your will might actually say.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and I think there's things that, people don't take into account. Like a will is great. A will can work fine. But if you have a kid that has special needs, then you don't want to write a will. Does everybody know like how that dynamic works? I don't think so. Cause I think we've both seen wills where that doesn't take into account. People don't take into account the words that they use in a will, especially if they have like a blended family that's particularly close, right? They think of their stepkids as their own kids, and they say, "I leave everything to my kids." Well, guess what? The stepkid is not your kid.
Yeah.
So there's things like that we see a lot of, and especially in Louisiana, because we have that one unique law that no other state has, forced heirship, that really colors all of our estate planning because we can't do certain things. But
things like your child being a contributing member to society, married, has their own house, their kids, but they're diagnosed with bipolar.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there's case law out there saying that they can be considered a forced heir, which can drastically affect your estate and how it's handled.
And it can affect your surviving spouse of how they're able to utilize that property if an attorney is not cognizant of, well, we got to deal with this forced heir, or we have to provide a contingent provision in case this person becomes a forced heir and allow the surviving spouse to still be able to do what they need to do.
How often have you run across people that come in and don't tell you the whole truth?
A lot.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think I've gotten better at it. I think when we're all, baby attorneys, we're naive.
But we get a sense now of the family dynamic by some of the things they say.
Yeah. You get a sense of, you learn to ask like the questions. And the way I usually do it is I tell them like, hey, I'm an attorney. I get to be rude. So I'm going to ask this question and just ask it straight out. But you can tell when they're not telling you the truth. You can tell like when someone is trying to get the answer from you that they want, even though it's not the right answer.
If that one little fact is left out, can drastically change the advice.
And sometimes it's not, sometimes it's intentional. Sometimes they're trying to, get one or, trying to do something that they're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's unintentional because some, people don't know the law, like, right. I mean, that's why they're coming to us. Like, I mean, we've had to change whole successions because someone was walking out the door and it said, hey, my husband who passed away gave a kid up for adoption. Does that matter? And I was like, yeah, it does in Louisiana. Like, so there's things like that where they just don't know. And it's hard to, because we ask these questions. We have an intake form. We ask all these questions. It's, they have to answer it. We can't.
Well, I think too, what's interesting these days, you talk about the kid that was put up for adoption. It just triggered a thought, in 20 years of practice and always doing some estate planning, certainly at the beginning, very simple stuff, and passing the client down the road to the more experienced lawyer if it was something that was involved a trust. That's why we're glad to have you now. But it didn't come up early on. It comes up now, and I'm just curious if you're seeing it too. The unknown child or family member as a result of, it's so easy to do DNA testing now through just things like 23andMe and Ancestry.com, and you're finding your heirs, and all of a sudden, well, we didn't know about that child, those kinds of things.
So, well, I have a funny story where one time I was talking to a client. It's like, good old boy. He was fun. But I asked him, we were doing his will. I was like, how many kids you have? He's like, I don't know. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know? He's like, I lived all over, I had a good life. And I was like, okay. But a lot of times, if you have a will, like it resolves that issue, right? Because as long as everybody's grown, then you can leave everything to your spouse and that sort of thing. Yeah. So where we see it become an issue a lot is when we don't have a will, or there's intestate succession, and someone's coming out of the woodwork. You hear a lot of like, well, this guy I was told this guy was my dad, and that sort of thing, or was my mom, and so I would say it's not like, I would say I see a lot more of it.
It went from 0 to 1 out of every 10 appointments.
Yeah, like it's not the most common thing we see, but it's more commonly seen now than it was probably. And I just think it's just one of those things that you just have to learn how to deal with. And unfortunately though, is because we're dealing with it because there wasn't a will. Usually we deal with them in the succession part of it where someone has died, but that's why it's important to have a will, so you can sort all those things out, or a trust,
Well, let me ask you this. So you're handling under the umbrella of estate planning, last will and testament, obviously, and all the accompanying documents. So it's a medical power of attorney, general financial powers of attorney, living will, disposition of remains, all those kinds of things. But trust seems to have become a much more, at least asked about, if not popular, request or recommendation these days. I think a lot as a result of social media. People are exposed to it now. They understand that a trust is a mechanism, or thing, so to speak, that can be used in a bunch of different walks of life. You don't have to be a Vanderbilt or a Rockefeller to need one. So what, on that front, like, what are some things that you'd want to mention or talk about here, so people can maybe better understand what they are, and potentially whether they need one or need to come talk to you about it?
Yeah. So like you said, a will, we're all familiar with the will. It's that piece of document that says, I want my stuff to go here. And then real quick, what I always like to tell people is the other important documents to have are the powers of attorney, like you mentioned. The wills and trusts sort of protect your estate and assets after you die. Powers of attorney protect your assets while you're alive. It avoids a lot of litigation, unneeded litigation, if you just do these couple documents. But what you're seeing a lot with the trust now is, I think you're right, I think there's a lot more that people talk about the trust, whether it's good information or bad information. But we are starting to see a lot more people utilize trust, and that's for a number of reasons. One is a trust is very useful. Where I practice, I'm in Slidell, right? So that's where I live, which is right next to Mississippi. So I have a lot of clients that have places in Mississippi and Slidell. They have a farm or a camp or something like that. And a trust is a great estate planning tool, because you can put that thing in a trust and you don't have to open succession in 2 different states, right? Sure. Again, that's something else that a trust helps with, is you avoid the probate process, right? You don't have an estate. It just goes through the trust. Trusts are also helpful when you have kids that, if they're special needs, right? If their eligibility for benefits is means-based, a special needs trust can allow you to give them their inheritance or give them funds, and it doesn't impact their eligibility status.
And how does that really work, though? So it maybe doesn't tinker with their eligibility, but there have been times where I thought, maybe putting things in a special needs trust really was almost a mechanism of preserving it for the state and their lien rights and being able to come back as creditors. But tell me more about that. Is it something that does the child actually get to benefit from those things that you put in the trust?
Yeah, they do. It's the whole point. Like, usually when you write a special needs trust, there's sort of language in there, I'm going to paraphrase here, that's essentially like, the funds in these trusts are to be used for everything but the kid's medical care, right? Yeah. So
because of the eligibility requirement.
Right, because of the eligibility requirement, because
that's what the benefit's for.
That's what the benefit's for. So you're only allowed to have a lot of these, the sort of generic sort of resource or asset limit is $2,000, right? Like that's what you're allowed to have in your bank account. So if you're not allowed to have more than $2,000 in your bank account, how are you able to save up to buy a car or transportation? Like those sorts of things. So And also that money, if you're receiving some type of income, is being used. You have to use it, spend it down, and those sorts of things. So if we have this special needs trust, it allows that person, or allows you to say donate it to your kid who needs it, but it also allows that person to, get things that they need, entertainment stuff, clothes,
Let me ask you this way: is it safe to say, as a blanket statement, if you have a child with special needs and is receiving, government benefits, can you think of a scenario where the parents should not be considering a trust?
No.
Yeah.
Because there's a case right now where someone tried a do-it-yourself trust,
Mm-hmm.
and what they said in the trust is, when I die, everything goes to the estate of my 2 kids, and one of their kids has a special need, and we're trying to figure out a way to where that doesn't knock them off their eligibility. So it's not something intentional. Obviously, if you have a kid that's special needs, that you're not going to do anything while you're alive to affect their eligibility. But
at your death, if it automatically goes to them,
right? Because if they're special needs, they're generally speaking a forced heir, so they're going to get a certain portion of your
involuntarily
estate.
they get it,
right?
And then
so
they lose eligibility.
Right. So you need to have that, and depending on there's certain things you can do to help keep that money with the family as well, and those sorts of things. So there's really, if you have a kid with special needs, you need to consider continuing tutorship, which is part of estate planning, so that you still have access and you can take care of them even when they become the age of majority. 18, and you got to do that. I think 16 is kind of like, that's when you really got to start moving on that. But then also, that's you got.
That's a good point to mention, though. So it's not something that happens overnight. It's not just a simple filing with the court.
Right.
I mean, you're essentially, the law sees them as having capacity, and we're taking it away essentially through the court system.
Yeah.
And I mean, not oddly enough, I mean, it's a good thing that the court system is very, watching that really closely, because we don't want to make it easy to take somebody's capacity away. So they see them as having capacity. You got to go through this mechanism. So you're thinking 16 years of age is a good time to start, to make sure we've got enough time, enough room to get that, tutorship handled.
Yeah, because the alternative is, because it is a process, paraphrasing here, that there's going to be, you got to file a petition, all that sort of good stuff. You got to get the coroner to sign off on it. You got to get doctors to say, the IQ levels at a certain, point, and that sort of thing. But because if you don't do it and they become 18, they're a major, and you have to do what's called an interdiction, which is a court proceeding where you have to sue that kid. There's court-appointed attorneys. You have to go to court. I get appointed for those a lot of times.
And I think the government entities are watching that more closely now. Maybe there was a time back in the day, maybe it was 10, 20 years ago, who knows how far back, that, this person has this condition. Maybe they're, Down syndrome or something like that, right? And the agencies all sort of played ball. Oh, your mom, here's the records. Here's what's going on. Yeah. But now I feel like all those entities, because of litigation from attorneys that are not like us.
That's right. That's right.
They all play by the rule very specifically.
And that's a good reason about like the POAs and stuff, the powers of attorney. Yeah. The example I always give is, because there is a little bit of grace that's given between family members in those sort of situations. But the example I always give is that when, my wife Becky was having kids, you go to the doctor with her and you look at the ultrasounds, you do those visits. But at any point in time, my wife could have said, I don't want Mike to be in here, and I would be kicked out. Yeah. And, it's now where that becomes a problem is when your spouse or someone has these, cognitive deficiencies, and you need to be in there. They're not able to report what the doctor says.
They don't even recognize who you are that day, and they're asking the hospital to remove you. They do, and now you don't know what's going on.
Right, and you can't just call up and say, hey, I'm so and so's husband. I need access to them, because they don't know that. And
so that's a different sort of it's almost like special needs, but it's a sort of a different category, right? For the spouses that it progress through that.
What it is it's more along the lines of that interdiction thing, right? With the continuing tutorship and special needs, if you don't take care of those things, it's gonna lead you to having to do this interdiction process down the road. And that interdiction process is also the same way you resolve a deficiency with powers of attorneys and those sorts of things. So
and my horror story, I have one on that real quick, and we're kind of running out of time here, but I had an individual, he was born with a mental incapacity, and he lived his entire life into his 70s.
Yeah.
And his mom had cared for him for most of the time, and she passed away, and he went to live with another family, and they were helping him with everything.
Yeah.
Of course, the agencies wouldn't speak to him, so we tried the interdiction.
Yeah.
We get midway through the process, and then out of the woodwork comes a relative who outranked the unrelated family he lived with.
Right.
And they, in fact, were granted the curatorship.
Right.
Lived 6 months before passing away as curator, but burned through all of his cash in the 6 months and left, the poor guy with nothing after that.
Yeah.
And, had mom taken care of this earlier on, can you set up a backup? Like in the tutorship proceeding, you establish not just the initial tutor, but also backup potential?
Yeah. So usually, every time there's a tutor and a backup tutor.
So if something happens to the initial one, if that's mom or dad, right, that's all that's left here. Maybe it's a sibling, or maybe it's a family relative, or who knows.
The under tutor also can, be there to kind of keep the tutor or curator, in check.
Yeah.
They can be like, hey, why are you spending all this money? Why are you doing all this other stuff?
Yeah.
And they're there to act as, usually when you got to do something, the under curator, under tutor is also the one that has to consent to it as well.
So look, I think we're going to dig into that a lot more on another day, because I think there's a lot of knowledge they could gain from hearing more specifics about how these things have worked in real life and what all the trust can potentially do for them. But in the meantime, it was good to have you on. Sorry we ran so short on time. But yeah, we loved having you as a part of the firm and, running that entire division for us. You've done a great job, and we hope you keep it up. But for anybody out there that even just thinks they need these sort of things, you can reach out to us through the website, through social media, calling us, emailing us, what have you, and we can put you in touch with Mike and his paralegal Shannon that kind of helps run things on his side, and we can at least have a conversation about whether this is something y'all need. Mike is one of the few guys that I would trust to handle these type matters. Again, he's specialized for the state of Louisiana, which is something that I think these days everyone should really look for when it comes to estate planning. But again, thanks for coming on. Right. Glad to have you, and we appreciate the time.
All right, thanks for having me.
Yep, thanks. That's it for today's episode of No Quit. If you're still showing up, still building, still fighting, I see you. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and join me for more behind-the-scenes lessons on what it takes to keep going when most people would walk away. And remember, success isn't about getting it perfect. It's about not giving up.